Hashtag the world must know. This was the campaign launched by AfriForum in 2022, through which the lobby group said it wished to, and I quote, make the world aware of the oppression of minorities in South Africa, end quote. So they sent high-profile leaders to speak at various right-wing conservative conferences and dinners to draw attention to the crisis in South Africa. Amongst the issues they said they wished to highlight was that kill the Boer, kill the farmer was neither hate speech nor an incitement to violence. You may remember that court ruling in 2022. And now the recent passing of the Expropriation Act has been used by the new Trump administration as the pretext for executive orders halting all aid to South Africa and to grant white Afrikaners refugee status in that country should they seek it. How should we wade these uncertain waters diplomatically? We thought we'd bring an old hand at this, the former International Relations Minister, Dr Naledi Pandor, to give us her views on all of this. As always, appreciate your time and welcome back to 702 Breakfast.
Good morning, Bongani, and morning to the listeners of Radio 702. Thank you for remembering I still exist.
Listen, the old Chinese curse has been visited upon us. We live in interesting times.
Indeed, I think really challenging times for South Africa, and I'm sure our government is, really responding and planning to respond effectively to what is a challenge both to our own reality as well as the opportunities that exist for us in the global community.
AfriForum has tried to walk back some of their rhetoric and lobbying. Do you buy it?
Definitely not. I don't think they can walk it back. They must live up to the misinformation that they provided about our country. This lies squarely on their desk, and they cannot run away from it.
Here's the difficulty, though. You call it misinformation. The U.S. president takes it as fact. I mean, he wrote that South Africa is confiscating land, treating certain classes of people very badly. You and I may know it's not true, but he offers no evidence in terms of backing up what he is claiming, and he's now issued these extraordinary executive orders.
Well, I think this is a challenge for us to actually respond effectively as South Africa, and it also suggests that we must up our communication because clearly our status is misunderstood, misrepresented, and I think we're not sufficiently putting out the facts about South Africa. So there's a great deal of work that needs to be done. We also need to make sure that we are in touch with friends in the United States of America. And I think we must invigorate the activities of the South African Chamber of Commerce, the American Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce in the United States, so that, all of them are speaking with one voice. And I think what we should also do is really extend that work that President Ramaphosa announced in his State of the Nation address of envoys being sent out and really intensifying diplomatic work. We've got to get our story out there.
Here's the difficulty, though, is that we have sent high-level envoys to Washington even when you were still minister. And part of the difficulty in dealing with all of this is that it's easy to frame it as a Trump or even a Republican idea, the idea of punishing South Africa. But increasingly, it would appear it's getting bipartisan support even from some Democrats. So do we still have the friends you're saying we should call on?
Yes, indeed, we do. There are many. I mean, we do know that it's now very difficult to distinguish between the Democrats and the Republicans in terms of policy. We also know that there's no ill intent on the part of South Africa, both in terms of its concern for the freedom and human rights of Palestinian people and the case that it has taken to the International Court of Justice. South Africa is acting in terms of a framework that the entire world has adopted of human rights and justice. The framers of much of that of those laws, are the United States of America. And we need to be more clearly stating that we are acting in terms of, frameworks that have been embraced by the entire global community, and we're making them a reality as South Africa, alongside the socioeconomic development that we're pursuing and this massive experiment of creating a united, diverse South Africa, which I think AfriForum neglected to mention in its engagement.
Again, I'm going to ask you this question, because part of the difficulty I think we face, even in sending those envoys to Washington, is, in a sense, we're explaining the inexplicable. This administration, and I would dare say this particular president of the US, they don't seem to care about the facts. I mean, much of what South Africa has said and tried to communicate, this is publicly available information. It's not, it's not secretive. If they really cared about what is happening in South Africa, at the very least, they would try to establish the facts. And so when we try and present arguments about our strategic importance and we try to be rational and logical, it feels to me that's what would have worked maybe 4 years ago, or under a different president or under a different administration. The entire playbook that we are familiar with has been thrown out.
Well, it has to some degree, but there is Bongani realpolitik, and one has to face up to that. Now, the exports that South Africa sends through to the United States, they go to particular corporations. They land at ports where they are worked on by workers who are employed. There are farmers who export to South Africa. There are commercial entities that receive our goods and sell them in their retail stores. So the whole chain of effect exists. And I think we can't be, sitting saying, oh, woe is me. We have to act, because we are dealing with a very difficult and complex environment. But that doesn't mean you sit back and accept it as a fait accompli and that there's nothing you can do. I believe there are actions that can be taken, and I'm sure that our government will act.
Such as?
Well, firstly, as I said, we go out there, we must be visible. 2, we must communicate the facts. 3, it's not only government that should communicate, it's a range of other social actors in our country. And 4, we must engage in the economic space, because that space is the one that will have an impact.
What are your thoughts on the reported, 10,000 inquiries supposedly made by South Africans on the relocation process? This is what the SA Chamber of Commerce in the USA President Neil Diamond is saying.
Well, it's the right of any person to seek to relocate. We don't have the detail as to who that might be, but they certainly have the freedom to do so, as does any person in terms of a particular country's immigration laws. We are often our own worst enemy as South Africans, because we really see ourselves much more in a negative light than in the positive attributes that our country has. And I think we've got to lift that out much more and really talk about ourselves and our achievement in a different way.
You have argued quite forcefully, and I think you alluded to that a little earlier on, that South Africa is unlikely to be kicked out of AGOA, but increasingly the noises are that is a possibility, at least a consideration. Certainly, business in South Africa has expressed concern. Organizations like Business Unity South Africa, for example, really worried about whether or not, come September, our participation in AGOA will be renewed.
Well, South Africans did very well to get the United States to ensure that we hosted AGOA just about a year or so ago. And I think we must bring that same energy to efforts now. I've never thought of South Africans as a people who are fearful or who cannot take on a very challenging obligation. So I think let's marshal our resources, let's come together and let us respond. In addition, I really welcome the statements by the CEO of Agri SA and other agricultural bodies who have said these are all false claims about our country. And we need more of that. Instead of asserting the likely negative, what are the contacts of Business Leadership South Africa? What is Business Unity South Africa saying out there? Who do they know? Who do they work closely with? Who are the main trading partners? Are they aware? What are their views? Could they be part of a direct lobby within the United States? So let's put our thinking caps on instead of this woe is me.
All right, Dr. Naledi Pandor, former International Relations Minister, thank you for your time weighing in on what South Africa should do in these choppy diplomatic waters.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.